Welcome to today's Explainer. We are diving headfirst into the hidden world of military space technology. We're going to venture way down below the surface of what's publicly known, completely stripping away the internet rumors to look at the actual documented reality of state-sanctioned secrecy. Our goal today is to explore those brilliant flashes of innovation that are happening right now within the dark, classified expanse of government research.
To really understand how deep this rabbit hole goes, we actually need to start with a question that connects this invisible world directly to you. How exactly did a highly classified aerospace defense project end up sitting right there in your pocket? Seriously, every single time you use your smartphone to navigate around traffic or find a new coffee shop, you're actually tapping into technology that was born out of intense Cold War paranoia and ultra-strict military secrecy.
All right, let's rewind a bit to the dawn of the space race. Back in the 1950s, early launch vehicles, like the Vanguard rocket, were literally the bleeding edge of defense research. When the Soviets successfully orbited Sputnik, well, the United States was totally caught off guard. That urgent technological threat suddenly necessitated the creation of the Navy's Mini-Track system. It was a network initially built just to track Vanguard, but it very quickly evolved into something absolutely critical for national defense. So the desperate need to track these unannounced, silent Soviet satellites flying over the U.S. led directly to the invention of the Naval Space Surveillance System. By measuring the phase differences of radio signals bouncing off objects in orbit, these interferometer stations could essentially pinpoint their locations. And you know what's truly fascinating? This exact system, born back in the 1960s, is still operational today, and it tracks up to 80% of all man-made objects orbiting the Earth. Now, that very tracking system laid the groundwork for the next massive leap forward. Enter the Timation satellite, developed by Roger L. Easton at the Naval Research Laboratory. In 1964, Easton had this totally revolutionary idea. What if we used incredibly precise clocks, carried up on satellites, to provide three-dimensional navigation back down here on Earth? Well, the Timation project successfully proved this concept worked, serving as the core foundational architecture for what we all universally know today as GPS. If we trace this progression out, you go from the sheer shock of Sputnik in '57 to Easton's brilliant Timation concept in '64 to the fundamental military patent for GPS in 1974. But I want you to notice that very first date, 1951. Years before the space race even officially began, the Invention Secrecy Act was already setting the legal stage for exactly how all of these subsequent aerospace breakthroughs would be contained and controlled by the state. So, we've looked at the visible tip of the iceberg with GPS, but now we really need to plunge below the surface. It is honestly astonishing that a single piece of legislation, the Invention Secrecy Act of 1951, gives selected defense and intelligence agencies absolute authority to review patent applications. If they decide an invention is just too sensitive, they can compel its classification under a secrecy order, completely suppressing it from public disclosure. The absolutely crucial point here revolves around one very specific legal threshold: detrimental to national security. That is the exact magic phrase the government uses to legally justify withholding a patent, barring a private inventor from commercializing, or even talking about their own intellectual property. If the Pentagon or the NSA decides your brand new aerospace component or advanced communication algorithm meets this definition, boom, your technology goes dark. And hey, this isn't just some rare wartime exception. 5,792. According to the Federation of American Scientists, that is the exact number of active secrecy orders that were in effect at the end of fiscal year 2018. That figure represents a multi-decade high. Just let that sink in for a second. Nearly 6,000 individual inventions, many of them likely tied to advanced space and military systems, are legally locked away right now in a massive hidden vault of classified research. Now, check out the sheer scale of the government's own sovereign patent portfolio. It's staggering. The U.S. Navy alone holds over 4,200 active patents. That completely dwarfs the Army's roughly 150 annual grants. And this massive portfolio covers critical, highly tactical domains that heavily rely on space and naval supremacy. Stuff like advanced navigation systems, autonomous vehicle coupling, and really highly specialized acoustics. But this whole system of secrecy is currently facing a massive modern challenge, which experts often call the patent paradox. See, the 2013 America Invents Act actually created a loophole. It gives inventors a one-year grace period to publicly disclose their technology before formally filing a patent. So what's the problem?
Well, if an inventor publicly demonstrates a sensitive defense tech to secure investor funding before filing, that tech is suddenly exposed globally. By the time the patent office actually reviews it and slaps a secrecy order on it, the cat is already out of the bag for international competitors. Yet, the domestic inventor is still legally gagged.
And this perfectly brings us to the dual-use dilemma. It's a delicate, heavily regulated pipeline. It almost always starts with a tactical military need, like accurately navigating submarines, which then funds classified research, much like Roger Easton's satellite clocks. Eventually, through federal tech transfer agreements, those heavily guarded orbital secrets get declassified. They integrate into the civilian sector, and ultimately, they drive our modern economy.
Okay, so we know for a fact that tech like GPS and microwaves successfully made it through that pipeline. But now we're going to take a deep breath and plunge completely under the water into the deep abyss. If those groundbreaking technologies were classified decades ago, what kinds of modern technologies are currently locked behind those 5,792 active secrecy orders today?
Well, based on current defense intelligence reports, modern black projects are heavily focused on a few key domains. We're talking directed energy, advanced propulsion, classified artificial intelligence, and next-generation space sensors. The government is actively monitoring these specific fields to ensure absolute military superiority. Let's look a little closer at directed energy weapons, basically high-powered lasers. Here on Earth, firing a high-powered laser is incredibly difficult because the beam loses massive amounts of power to atmospheric absorption. Water vapor and aerosols literally eat the energy before it hits the target. But up in the vacuum of space, those physical limits just disappear entirely. And that is exactly why space-based directed energy systems are kept under the very highest levels of classification. They represent a total paradigm shift in orbital warfare. And then there's AI, which perfectly illustrates this hidden gap. While the public is currently marveling at commercial AI models boasting roughly 1 trillion parameters, defense analysts estimate that classified AI systems are operating on a completely different scale, somewhere between 10 and 100 trillion parameters. Because these classified models are trained on vast, secure oceans of signals intelligence and satellite data, experts believe they're a full 5 to 10 years ahead of anything the public even knows about.
But it gets even wilder, because the state's interest doesn't just stop at practical engineering, it pushes right up to the very edges of known physics. Declassified documents actually reveal that the Defense Intelligence Agency has actively funded theoretical research into advanced aerospace applications. We are talking about studies on warp drives, manipulating extra dimensions, invisibility cloaking, and negative mass propulsion. While it's highly theoretical, it proves the government maintains a legitimate active interest in boundary-pushing physics just to ensure they are never, ever surprised by an adversary.
So you might be wondering, why the sudden surge in secrecy orders recently? Well, it's driven heavily by intense global strategic competition. A major factor here is China's military civil fusion strategy. This is a state-led effort specifically designed to acquire and integrate global intellectual property right from civilian channels into their military apparatus. Because adversaries are actively targeting these early-stage, dual-use technologies, the U.S. government feels compelled to aggressively use the Invention Secrecy Act to restrict technical disclosures and maintain its edge.
Now, we have to draw a hard line here and separate fact from internet fiction. There is a totally critical distinction between classified science and forbidden tech. Classified science relies on the verifiable, legally mandated containment of real, functional intellectual property, like advanced satellite sensors that actually obey the laws of physics. Forbidden tech, on the other hand, refers to those conspiracy theories surrounding things like perpetual motion machines that fundamentally violate physics. The government suppresses the former to protect the nation. The latter simply doesn't exist.
At the end of the day, this whole complex web connects directly back to your everyday life. The invisible, highly secure infrastructure of our modern world, from the GPS guiding your commercial flights, to the internet routing your text messages, to the advanced materials inside your electronics, it all relies entirely on this very precise, historical balance. It's this constant tug of war between maintaining necessary sovereign secrecy for national defense and eventually allowing commercial innovation to just flourish. Which leaves us with this final lingering thought to chew on. Take a look at that device in your hand, powered by a satellite network that was once a closely guarded naval secret. If the revolutionary technology of GPS was a classified military project 50 years ago, what incredible paradigm-shifting space technology is orbiting silently above us right now, hidden behind a secrecy order that we won't even know exists for another 50 years? Thank you so much for exploring the dark expanse with us in today's Explainer. Keep looking up and keep asking questions.